Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the Sony Open. Gonna get you ready for all of your prop and betting exposure today. With first off, a look at the weather report. Then we'll go through some pin locations, shots gained metrics, and then finally some prop value across the board, across Underdog Prize Picks, Draftkings, Fanduel, that sort of stuff to give you guys some exposure out here for the final round. But hopefully you're having a fantastic weekend wherever you guys are around the world. And so we already got costed in down there with a few questions about the golf course. After we go through pins, I'll be able to give you the answers over there to those questions. But hopefully you're having a fantastic start to your Sunday. I started off with a look at the golf course for round 3, which played pretty much just as expected. It played 1.21 strokes under par. It played a little bit easier in the morning than the afternoon, which was also kind of what we were calling for. And compared to round number 2, I thought it might play a little bit easier than round number 2, but it was about 0.07 shots harder. So it wasn't a massive difference or anything like that, but I thought it might be closer to like a 1.4 under par scoring average. So the 1.21 was maybe a little bit surprising, but depending on the Sunday pin locations, I'm expecting a lot of the same. It's been in this -1, -1.2 range for all 3 rounds. The first day, it was closer to that -1. Rounds 4, unless it's super difficult pins, and I haven't really had a chance to go through them quite yet, I don't think that is going to change very much. In terms of your scoring averages, I've also got all of those on the screen here. The -1.21 at the top, but more importantly, we've got the birdie, bogey, fairway, and GIR averages there. So your birdie average was about 3.75 per round. I thought it would be around at that number or maybe up to 4 per round, so closer to 3.75. And then the bogey or worse average is about 2.5 per round. And I think that's the one real differentiator from rounds 2 to 3. Round 2, the bogey average went down from round number 1 to closer to 2.2 per round. And when we got over here to moving day with a few tricky pin locations, namely what they had at like hole number 10, it went up to 2.48 per round. So it could have been pin location wise, could have been the fact that the winds were up out there for round number 3. But this set of scoring averages is pretty much going to be spot in line with what we have for tomorrow because the weather forecast looks nearly identical. So we'll go through a few of the different models on here. Some of them have a little bit of rain coming through the afternoon, but the winds in that 15 to 20 mile an hour range at almost every occasion. So ECM here is closer to 15 to 17. GFS model is one of the spicier models that has it closer to 20 to 22. This one's closer to 18 to 20. Medio blue is 15 to maybe 14 miles an hour. And the last model here is maybe the calmest out of all of them, but this one has the most significant rain out of all the different models. And it also, you can see here, has the morning a little bit spicier than the afternoon. But either way, I think the conditions from round 3, which were blustery for almost the entire day, are almost spot in line with what we're going to get out here for round 4. So I think the pin locations are going to be the real differentiator when it comes to all of that. So let's go through it. Let me bring up Twitter real quick. I actually forgot to do so. We're going to bring up the PGA Tour site as well, so we can go through all those pin locations hole by hole. And I know they posted them last night. So unlike these night live streams like we did for rounds 1 and 2, we're going to have them to work with nice and early in the morning. So let me bring up Forecast real quick. We're bringing that up. And then here's the pin sheet as I just mentioned. What's going on, Paul L? Hopefully you're having a fantastic Sunday. And what'd you say? Probably a good thing we didn't get a stream after the Steelers game. Yeah, I was late. I was out with my family watching the game. I could have done the live stream, but I'm glad to do it in the morning. Just a little bit easier on the mind. And hey, I'm tired as hell at midnight, and I don't think many of you are awake up at midnight anyways. I haven't seen you at a night live stream. So yeah, glad to have one in the morning. And then DK needs to fix their notifications. You got to notice about McNeely. No, he's out for next week. So they're not incorrect about that, but he is playing for Sunday today. So he's withdrawing next week. It is a little confusing, but there's no way to avoid that. I'll just tell you as a programmer myself that they have it programmed where if anyone withdraws from a current event, that it sends you a notification, right? And it's impossible to fix those kind of things unless you completely rework the way that they do their notifications, which would break their notifications for NFL. So you got to think that this might be a problem that they know about, right? They can't fix it right now because if they disable it to go and do that, then these guys that are playing NFL today, God forbid somebody's rolled out late or something like that, then they're not going to have a way to relay that information to their people. And they care a lot more about those NFL people, the hundreds of thousands of users, than maybe the 500 to 2,000 that are playing Showdown. So I get it. It's kind of unavoidable, but yeah, he's playing. So make sure you know that, right? McNeely is playing today at least as of right now. Let's go through these pin locations. So over here on the front left on hole number 1, I can tell you right now it's going to be a little bit of a harder pin location. Main reason for that is you don't have the backstop that you had for rounds 2 and 3. Round 2 pin location was here in the back left. You had that little slope behind it that helped you, if you had a ball coming in a little hot, would help you stop it close to the pin. And then for round number 3, they also had that same kind of effect. Now, a lot of people weren't using that kind of backstop. They were, landing it short and just rolling it up to the pin. Even the same thing over here in the back left, because you have all of that room. But because it's a front left pin location, just to circle back to it, it's 12 paces from the front, not 12 paces from this bunker, and only 6 from the left over there. This is going to be a much more difficult shot, mostly because it's a long iron in. If you miss the fairway, it's a 200-yard shot in. If you're hitting out of the rough on hole number 1, you have 0 shot to hit it close to this pin location. And then even if you hit the fairway, which might be closer to 170, 160 yards that you're hitting in from the fairway, it's a much more difficult shot than what you had for rounds 2 and 3, because you don't have nearly as much room to run up the ball close to that pin location. So if I was a player in hole number 1, I would really prioritize holding that fairway, and then I would be conservative. I would just hit it past that pin location at hole number 1, and I really wouldn't fuck around with it. Hole 2 is in the back right, so it's not quite like tucked in the very back right, a little bit closer towards the center, but I would say that that one is a slightly easier pin location than what we had for round 3. I wouldn't call it an easy one, though, as it is a little bit of a longer hole in that very back corner, but you don't really have anything protecting it other than the long shot. If you pull it long into that rough, I guess it'd be a little bit of a tricky up and down, especially if you really pull it like a 10, 15 yards long. But there's no bunkers over here to the right. You've got enough room to land a little bit short and get it closer. And at this hole, it's long approach shots. So it's only a 420-yard hole. So you might think that they're hitting wedges, which could be hard to a back pin location, but they're usually laying up off the tee at hole number 2. In fact, Steven Yeager was one of the more aggressive players that you had in the field, and he's still at 146 yards in, and that was to a pin location that was further up. So if you're laying back, that's at least 160 yards that you're hitting in, which is kind of nice to that back pin. It gives you the room you need to hit it close. Hole 3 is in the back right. So yeah, hole 2 was also in that same section. Kind of weird that they're putting 2 similar pins back to back, but it's up here in this back little shelf. It's a longer shot. It's a much harder shot than what you had for round number 3. So based on these first few holes, it looks pretty tricky. I mean, hole 2 wasn't all that bad. It might be slightly easier, but hole 1 was tricky. And then hole 3, you are hitting wedge here, by the way. Hole 3, you see a lot more drivers than what you see at hole number 2. You can see Yeager here had about 137 yards in. This back pin location is a little bit trickier if you're hitting something closer to like 110, 120. And the reason I say that, by the way, maybe you're not a big golfer out there yourself, you just watch a lot of golf, is if you're hitting a club from like 130, 140 yards, it's going to spin a little bit less than if you're hitting it from like 110, 120. 110, 120 is a very hard degreed wedge, maybe even like a 54, 52 for a lot of these players. And that's going to spin back like 10, 15 feet. Now, if you're hitting like a pitching wedge, or not a full pitching wedge, maybe even like a half 9 iron or something like that, that ball is going to hit the green and release. So that's why we say that these back pin locations can sometimes be easier, but not so much on hole 3 here, where it's tucked way in the back. It brings in that bunker to the left, and you've got some slope running into it as well. It's again, it's not as tricky as hole 2, but it's not complete cake because it's a wedge coming in. Hole 4, so let's see what this one is. Hole 4 is going to be oh my God. All right, guys, I thought we were going to take some like unders and stuff, and this pin location just encapsulates why that might be a bad idea. They're putting it in the very back corner. So you can see over here, hole 4 is in the very back left corner, so up on this little shelf. Now, it makes me think that they're not going to keep the tee box the whole way back. They did move back the tee box for round number 3, but rounds 1 and 2, if you guys were here on the live stream, they moved it up to this next tee box. And if they're going to put it the whole way back on that back shelf, also on the left side, which is the harder of the 2 pin locations on the back, then I really cannot see them playing it from the whole way back. But if they do play it from the whole way back, that's like a 240-yard hole. And the first few days it was into the wind. It's the same wind direction out there for today. I mean, it would be borderline unfair. So we'll have to see what they do there. But oh my goodness. Yeah, these pin locations. 5 is crazy too. Oh my God. Guys, they're not messing around. They're like trying to punish these players. I mean, look at hole 5. Hole 5's in this back right corner. It's only 4 paces from the right. It's the whole way back there. So it's about right here where you see me on the screen here, about where my cursor is there. You got to hit it the whole way into the green. You got to carry this entire bunker. If you hit it a little bit short out to the right, a little bit weak right, maybe a push it. If you're a right-hander, you're going to be in the rough, and it's going to be a short-sided up and down. It's just, they are, whoever the greenskeeper is, I don't think he's had a good week. He's not taking it easy on these guys. Hole 6 is here in the front left over here on this side of the green, this little peninsula. You can see to the left of this bunker. It's not as easy a pin location as round 3. The reason why this round 3 pin location was as easy as it possibly gets is you had a punch bowl effect here. You had the slope to the left, which would help you get closer, to the right, even short and long. You also had slopes helping you. This is an okay pin. It's not a super hard one because it's short. It's a little bit less protected than the rest of the green, but you don't have that same slope effect helping you like you did for yesterday. So I would say easier than rounds 1 and 2, but not easy. Hole 7 is tucked over here towards the right side, kind of near this bunker. You do have slope to the left, which I guess could help you stop the ball close to the hole, but that bunker to the right is going to be an issue there. Let's look at hole number 8. 8 is tucked over here towards the left side. It is 6 paces from that left bunker and about 14 paces on. So it's about like right here, something like that. I would say an easier pin than round 3. Round 3, it was tucked there in the very back right. But because that left bunker is in play, I wouldn't call it an easy pin location. And then finally, hole number 9, this is a par 5, the easiest hole on the PGA Tour. Over here on the left side is another easy pin location. So I know we had the question from Cosadin before asking about the Eagles. I would say that they're going to be a slightly less prevalent at 9 just because the angle into this pin location was a lot easier, right? You could kind of hit it up the throat of the green and get it close. You've got to hit a draw to get it closer to this pin location, but you still have a lot of room to work with there. Let's go to 10. So hole 10 is a front left pin location. This is a lot easier than what you had for the last 2 days. So round 2 was in the back left. Round 3 it was over here in the back right, like you can see there. In the front over here, this is a much easier pin location. So guys, the front 9 looked really tough with the exception of like one hole. The back 9 might be a different story. So let's see what we have here. So 11's over here towards the right side because of the wind direction, which by the way is coming in on hole 11. So in from the left side. So kind of like where those tents are towards the left, it's coming from there towards the green. So a pin location over here towards the front right, you can see it's 17 paces on, so you're going to have some room to work with, is pretty favorable. Now, the unfortunate part is that it's getting you close to these bushes to the right. And if you've been following Shot Tracker for hole number 11 this week, you've probably seen a lot of penalty shots over this green. So it's an easier pin than having it tucked way in the back left. With that wind coming from behind the green into the left, it was almost impossible to get it close to that pin location. You're going to see a lot more birdies here at hole 11, but it is also going to bring that penalty area into play, which I know it doesn't seem like it's that close, but it plays a lot closer just because of how firm and fast it is. Hole 12 is a middle right pin location, which is probably as easy as it gets. It looks like a really easy pin location to putt to. Hole number 13 is a front right pin location, which is also pretty easy. So yeah, I kind of thought this would happen, right? Front 9 was really hard. 10 looked easier. And it, so far, even up to 13 here, these are easier pin locations. 13 was tucked in the way back left. It was the hardest pin location that you got at 13. So while we had some bones yesterday, we had holes like 6 that were a lot easier. Hole 1 was easier, for example. There were a few other ones like I think 4 or 5 were easier right there yesterday. This back 9 it's going to play easier today actually than what you had on the front side. So let's see what's happening. So 14, this one looks a little tougher. So this is a shorter par 4, but it's tucked a little bit closer to that bunker. So not as accessible as what it was for round 3, but I wouldn't call this a difficult hole. I mean, sure, you could miss in the bunker, but I mean, you still have a decent amount of room to work with there. Hole number 15 is here towards like the middle right side. It's towards this broad side of the green. It's an easier pin location than round 3. It's just interesting how they have this set up. It's like they want the leaders to really struggle and then have a little bit of fireworks coming home. 16 is back towards the back middle. This is a harder pin. It brings in that left miss. Heck, if you miss to the right, maybe you push it, or maybe you're a lefty and you pull it over there in that right side bunker. That could be a little bit tricky. And then let's look at 17 is in the back left. This one's pretty hard. So yeah, the first few holes in the back 9 looked easier, but this one is a pretty tricky pin location. And then finally, 18 is the par 5. It's there in the back right. I wouldn't call this one tricky, but it's a little bit harder than what you had for the first 3 days. Round 1, it was here in the front right. Round number 2, it was over here towards like my cursor. And then round 3, you can obviously see it over there, just over that bunker. This back corner, it's a little bit harder to make birdie, I would say, just because if you don't hit a perfect shot into the green, you're likely chipping from in front of this green there towards the back. So it's a little bit of a longer chip. That's the only reason why I say birdie's harder, but you're going to see more eagles at 18, I would argue, because of all the extra room that you have here. A lot of your eagles yesterday, by the way, at 18 were coming from guys chipping or guys that were holding out from the bunker. You're going to have room, though, kind of like you see with this shot trail here. This guy landed it pretty good ways into the green. It was Steven Yeager, in fact, and he ended up just over the green. Now, if you're just over the green, that's like 5 paces from this pin. That'd be a really good shot. But imagine if he had landed it like 5 yards shorter, right? He lands it 5 yards shorter, he's going to be right next to that pin location. So 18, you could definitely see an eagle at. I mean, look at all that room you have to run up that golf ball. But the thing is, if you don't hit a good drive, kind of like you had at hole 9, by the way, you got to hit a good drive to hit it close to that pin location. You're playing for birdie at best over there at 18. Let's see. Last year, hole 1 played the toughest and the pin was similar. Yeah, it looks like it'll be the hardest pin. In round 4, it played the easiest. I think it depends on the actual pin locations, right? So I'm not sure if you went back and actually looked at where they had the pin locations. Like, for example, like round 1 pin's not always the exact same. Like they'll use different pins at different days. You might want to check on that because there's no way. You're saying if anything tougher than today? Yeah, I don't agree with that. Almost every year, round 4 plays the easiest or second easiest. Yeah, I think you're looking at the wrong stuff, man. And it's not always the same for round 4, right? It changes. Like they have different setups, right? That's why we go through the pin locations, why we don't just look through the stats, because they set it up differently. And I can tell you, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, man. Those are hard pins. You can't convince me otherwise. I'm a golfer. I've played college golf. I understand what these players are thinking about when they're hitting shots. And that is a hard set of pin locations. In fact, I would argue that it's like ridiculously hard in a few cases. Beginning of the back 9, though, hey, if you're one of the guys starting on 10, I think you're going to see some guys go low those first 3-4 holes. We pointed out that those were the easiest pin locations of anyone on the golf course, but you're starting on hole 1, and I just completely disagree with you, man. And hey, you're allowed to have your own take, right? It's free world. You're allowed to have your own opinions, but I just want to make it on the record. I disagree with you. Any strategy for guys starting on the back 9, getting off the better starts? Yeah, so just as it just said, yeah, I think so. Now, and you're saying not packing it in. I don't know about the psychological factor. That is way too hard for me to nail down. When people start talking about narratives, all that sort of shit, I usually just stop listening because it is way too hard to actually get right. But I do think that guys starting on the back 9 could get off to a good start. The issue with that is that the front 9 is better for streaks because that pin at hole number 10 is a lot easier. If 9's the easiest hole on the golf course, you're likely going to birdie that. You better be birdieing it if you're going to be an optimal showdown play. 10 looks like it could be an easy birdie, and 11 wasn't that bad either. I kind of like guys starting on 1 just because there's a really good chance for them to get a streak there. But psychologically, if you start on the back 9, I mean, you're -3 through your first few holes. I mean, that's going to feel really good too. So I could see it going both ways. Like I could see it being that the guy starting on the back get that psychological advantage. But I think for showdown, and when it comes to those bonus points, like getting those 3 bonus, the 3 birdie bonus, like that could be massive there. Let's talk through a few props. So going back to the averages, by the way, I would say that I don't think they're going to change very much. Like we had some tough pins out there for round number 3. Round 4, though, we've definitely got some more tough pin locations. So I would say this bogey average, I've got it at 2.5, maybe going slightly up. The birdie average, I don't think is going to move at all. I think the birdie average is going to stay right around 3.75 per round. You've got about the same kind of wind as what we had out there for round number 3. And while there were some tough pin locations, right, just to go back to that sheet, we also had ones like 15 that were easy, 18 that are super easy. 9 is still accessible. 3, right, the one that's slightly downwind with that par 4, like that's not going to be the hardest pin location. But like 4 comes to mind. 5 looks absolutely tough. I mean, heck, even 1, right, looks like a pretty tough pin location. I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. These averages, though, I don't think they're going to move all that much. Let's go through the Underdog and Prize Picks now. So I've got all these different boards up, including Draftkings. We got Fanduel. We can go through some of their odds as well. And I've started to look through the boards a little bit, but I did want to make sure we go through the pin locations before I really set my mind on what I wanted to play. And based on this pin location setup, I'm not going to be taking a whole bunch of unders or unstrokes or overs on birdies. That was going to be my initial inkling, kind of like we've done the last few days. Yesterday, it worked out rather nicely. Went out there, hit a bunch of bets for understrokes or like over on greens, that sort of thing. But for round 4, I think we got to be a little bit smarter about what we're doing, because I think you're going to see some blowups, particularly with some of those tougher pin locations. And I don't know, maybe we'll look at some green props. Maybe we can look at some pars or better for some of your elite tier players. Might be a better way to go about it. Cheers. We'll try the Eagles again and some unders too. But you should be really picky. I agree. I'm going to be picky about it too. I don't think I'm going to play a whole bunch today. Like yesterday, I had 4 slips. Today, it's probably going to be like 2 or 3 slips that I end up going with. Because if I don't see a massive edge, like those pin locations, they're kind of scaring me. I'm just not going to play a whole bunch. So I think that's the smart way to go about it, man. And let me double check on that. This guy, by the way, you said it was like always easiest in round 4. I just want to see if he's being truthful on that or not. Because yet last year it was true. But let's look at the last few years. Maybe he's onto something. I don't want to completely discount him. Is the reason I want to look at this. So round 4, played easiest round 4. That could have been because of weather, though, right? Obviously, there's a lot more than just the pin locations. Go to the year before that. Let's take a look at it. It played a little bit harder than round 3 that year. So that's maybe a counterexample to that. Let's take a look at the year before that. Played a little bit easier in round 4. But once again, that could have been pin locations. And the fact that it got 1.5 shots easier is almost for sure, right? Because of the fact that it was the weather, not the pin locations over there on Sunday. Let's look at the year before that. Played harder round 4. So yeah, I don't know, man. There's examples and counterexamples like every other year, right? I mean, like look at this one, right? Easier round 4. The year before that, slightly easier. Like it's a 50-50 sample size here, right? And if anything, it's like a 0.2 shot difference half the time. So yeah, I don't know about that. If you're looking at last year's stats, you might think that, but just keep in mind that the weather's a thing, right? It could have a huge impact on that as well. Where are we at? Almost easiest. There you go. Almost the easiest every year. Well, if you look at the last 4 years, man, it's 50-50. You're looking at the same data. Point is, it's not the hardest. It was the hardest for 2 of the rounds, bro. Yo, if you want to go out there and play that's going to play super easy, you do it, dude. I just don't agree with you at all. You're not going to change my mind on it, bro. You're looking at numbers and you're not looking at conditions, right? Numbers and conditions have to go hand in hand. If it plays calm out there, man, they can have the hardest pin locations humanly imaginable. If it plays as a calm day out here in Hawaii, they shoot -3, right? So you take a look at these averages. I mean, just to show you what I'm talking about, right? That one year where they shot like -3, what was it, 2022, where they shot like -3 in the last round? That wasn't because of pin locations. Like, there's zero chance, right? So like, you can't use this kind of data without the weather data along with it, right? It's kind of useless if you're looking at it that way. That's my opinion on it. I'll leave it there. Honestly, I'm done engaging in that conversation. What's going on, David? Any chance I go through some pick 6? I can, dude, but their payouts are absolute trash. And if you have access to Underdog and Prize Picks, you're doing yourself a really big disservice by playing on that kind of site. So we can, but I don't think it's the best idea. Good call on Spawn yesterday. I think he closes the deal. I think it's possible. Yeah. He's somebody that I went out there and bet out there for a lot of markets. Yesterday, took him for a 3-ball, took him for his under on strokes yesterday. Both of those ended up hitting. And if we take a look at the shots gained metrics, let me bring up Bet the Number so I can show you guys the numbers. They weren't as good out there for moving day. Rounds 1 and 2, it was all ball striking for Spawn, which is exactly what you want to see from a player. You want somebody that's doing it sustainably, and how you're hitting the golf ball is a very good way to do that sustainably. So if we go over here and I show you round 1 for JJ Spawn, he gained nearly 4 strokes ball striking. Round 2, he gained over 4 strokes ball striking. Round 3, he was okay. He still gained ball striking, but it wasn't quite those 3-4 strokes. I think you could get it done. Yeah. He's laughing down there. Yeah, trust me. I'm not stopping engaging because you're right. I'm stopping engaging because you're just so hard-headed. You refuse to listen to anything I'm saying and take it. Mitchell over 12.5 greens hit. Yeah, he hit for us yesterday, but I don't know if I'm going to go back to it. We'll have to see. So let's go through a few of these props. So, and by the way, the reason why I'm not sure I want to go back to it are holes like hole number 4. I mean, look at this pin location. It's in the back left. It could play 240 yards. Hole number 5 is going to be a harder green to hit. 2 and 3 could be harder as well. And the average was only 12.32. So yesterday, heading into round 3, it was 12.9 per round. And then it went down to 12.3 per round. I don't know. I'm going to probably stay away from Keith Mitchell on that one. He hardly went over his 12.5 line yesterday, and he hasn't really looked like his best self this week, David. I'd probably stay away from that. All right, let's go through a few props on here. So if I'm looking at Sunday, I think guys at -1, I don't think they're out of play for taking unders, right? I'm not thinking this course is going to play impossible, but my scoring average, I've probably adjusted it to that -1, -1.25 range. Something that's a little bit more reasonable. It's a little bit more, what's the word for it, conservative than like the 1.5, 2 under par scoring average. I just don't see it getting any easier than what we had for moving day. Just no way in hell. So if you're going to take a few props here, we're going to have to be very, very picky about what we're taking. We can't just take overs on birdies. We can't just take like unders on strokes and get away with it. We're going to have to find players that are getting it done in a sustainable fashion. And just off the top of my head, the two most sustainable shots gained records that I've seen this week are guys like an Eric Cole and a JJ Spawn. We already went through the JJ Spawn one, showed you all the shots gained, ball striking, and approach that he's had. And Eric Cole up here at 4 birdies made is the kind of player that's also played very consistent golf. So just to show you the stats with Eric Cole, if we take a look at the first 3 days, he's gained 6 strokes ball striking, including 1.2 off the tee and 4.7 shots gained on approach. So that's solid stuff right there. And the putter's been there as well. He's been a little bit hotter on the greens than a JJ Spawn, which is why I like him for a birdie or better line, which is a little bit more dependent on that putter. A strokes line's more dependent on the ball striking, right? Keeping yourself out of trouble, not making a lot of those big numbers. Whereas going out there and doing a lot of scoring is, Eric Cole's specialty. And if you take a look at some of the stats from 2024, Eric Cole was a top 50 birdie maker in all the PGA Tour. And the year before that, he was a top 25 birdie maker when he was a rookie out there in the PGA Tour. So this is the kind of slip that I'd probably be looking at for today if I was trying to find some positive stance plays. Now, the issue is I think it's going to play pretty tough. So the slip that I'm probably going to end up entering over here on Prize Picks, we're going to try and take one of these two props and then try and pair it up with a fade. Either an over on strokes, maybe an under on birdies, whatever the case may be, to try and get a full 3x payout. And just to decide between these two on which one's the better value, I'm going to go over here to Caesars. Let's see where they have Eric Cole for his birdie line. So he's at 3.5, but he's -170 over. So, I wouldn't call that really line value at 4, but I think it's a decent lean. And let's look where they have JJ Spawn. So they didn't have any strokes lines posted for Spawn yesterday, but I still took him for an under on strokes at this number because he was just playing unbelievable golf. And I actually don't have anything posted over there in Caesars. Let's see where they have him over here on Draftkings, because I'm assuming they have him up. So yeah, he's at 69.5, but -165 under. So it's pretty much the same with either player, right? We're getting like -165, -170 odds. With 0.5 higher or 0.5 lower in each case. So if I had to choose between the two, I would probably go with Eric Cole just because the 4 birdie line has a lot of push equity there. The field average for birdies, I think, is going to be about 3.75 per round. So to go over that sort of line, you've got to gain about 1/4 of a birdie to the field. And let me bring up the PGA Tour site right here. Let's go over here to stats. Let's type in Eric Cole. And we'll look at last year, right? We're not going to look at 2025, which is a 1 event sample size. But Eric Cole, who you can tell I've looked up his birdie line quite a bit on here, number 70 in the PGA Tour last year. Go to the year before that, though, he improves to number 8 on all of the PGA Tour. So tends to make a whole lot of birdies, really good putter on Bermuda grass. So let's throw him in there, and let's find him over here also. We'll throw him in on Underdog just so that we can see what we get better payout on. So actually, I guess they don't have his birdie line posted quite yet. Let me refresh it. Maybe it's something that they just added for Eric Cole. Yeah, look at that. So they have him at 3.5 birdies, actually, which that might be harder to play because of this multiplier. The 0.78x multiplier is not ideal. But if we can find a fade to take, this is just a random one that I'm clicking. So 2.5x, yeah, probably not enough. So I'd rather play him without the multiplier up at 4 than playing him at 3.5 with that multiplier. It's too much. Fishburne under 15.5 pars or better. Yeah, so if we take a look at the odds over here on Caesars, I was looking at this last night. It was one of the few lines that I looked at before I went to bed. Patrick Fishburne's -140 for his over, which makes sense with these tougher pin locations also, given that he's up there in contention. They also have an Eric Cole who's there at 2.5 and he's juiced over. To make it we could make this one of the fades that we do. I kind of like fading guys that are in contention, especially when they don't have the best shots gained metrics. And by the way, guys, I think Fishburne might be like a decent fade candidate because look at this. He lost 1.1 strokes on approach out there. And overall, this is actually for the entire event. And if we take a look at it round by round, Fishburne in round 1 lost about a stroke on approach. Round 2 was a little bit better. Round 3, I also believe, actually lost out there in round number 3. So yeah, he's lost in 2 of his 3 rounds. He's up there in the top 10 somehow. He's doing it all with the putter in the short game, which is not something that Fishburne does very often. And in fact, he's usually really good off the tee and a really good iron player. And off the tee, he's only gained a stroke this week, which is well below his baseline. And he's into the negative out there on approach. So yeah, dude, Fishburne might be, like you said, really good call there. Might be a good one for an under on pars or better. If we did that, that would be a 3x payout, by the way. Let me see. Do they have any pars or better stuff over here? Yeah, so nothing on Fanduel. They never have any of that posted, unfortunately. And then Draftkings, it's an even bigger pipe dream that they'd post anything like that. So you might be onto something here. Like of the guys up here at 15.5, Fishburne would be a pretty good candidate for a fade. I'd also say Lee Hodges would be a good candidate for a fade. The reason why I say Lee Hodges is he's also up there towards the top. And if we take a look at his shots gained metrics, he's been a little bit sketchy this week as well. So if you take a look over the first 3 days, I should say, he's gained 2 off the tee, which is pretty typical of what he does. He's a very accurate driver, but he's lost on approach and he's gained 6 strokes putting. Which if you know anything about Lee Hodges, you'll know that he's not the most accurate driver of the ball. And yesterday, he would have went over this sort of line. He had 3 bogeys or worse. The second round, he would have went under. In the first round, he would have went over as well. So despite being minus 11, having this really good week, Lee Hodges would have gone under this line in 2 of the 3 rounds. So, you know, these conditions, those pin locations, they don't look as easy as what they've looked for the first few days. I think that these 2 fades could be in order. And in fact, I don't know which one I'd like more. Like the Fishburne one makes sense, but so does the Lee Hodges fade. So let's look at this. So let's find the bogey avoidance numbers. So Fishburne, let's go to last year, 2024. Where the hell did Fishburne rank? Fishburne was number 3 in bogey avoidance. Holy shit. Okay, what is Lee Hodges? I'm assuming way lower, right? Yeah, Lee Hodges was number 50 on the PGA Tour. That's still pretty good, by the way. For Lee Hodges, 50 is a little bit higher than what I was expecting. But with them in contention, with them losing strokes of their ball striking, I'd have to think that both of these plays, Fishburne and Hodges, end up making it into my exposure for today. So we'll have to see how I exactly get to it. But I really like what you're doing there, man. 15 guys within 2 strokes. Yeah, dude, insane leaderboard. Makes it a lot more fun of a slate than when you get 2 guys running away. 100% agree, dude. A lot of fun. And hey, it's going to be fun to watch just as a golf fan this afternoon, right? Let alone from the fantasy side, props, all of that. It's going to be fun just to watch who ends up winning this thing. And I hope it's a young kid. Like you got some of these older veterans towards the top. I hope one of these guys that doesn't have a PGA Tour win can get it done. It's just always a good thing to see, right? Somebody getting that tour card and cementing their status for 2-3 years. Always a good story. So let's go through this. So who do I want to fade? Fishburne or Hodges? We're probably not fading both of them. I guess in theory we could for a 5x payout. If I was going to choose between the 2, though, let's just look at Fishburne real quick. So we know Hodges would have gone over in 2 of his 3 rounds. Let's look at Fishburne here. So Fishburne would have went over yesterday. He would have gone under round 2, and I'm guessing under round 1. Yeah, so he would have went under for 2 of the 3 days. He is only 1 shot off the lead, though. So maybe dealing with slightly more pressure than you have Lee. Actually, yeah, Lee Hodges is 1 stroke back, but he's the number 3 bogey avoider. I got to say that number 3 ranking for Fishburne up there it's kind of tough to overlook, right? You see somebody that's playing that well, but he's not playing that well this week. Is I guess the added caveat is that's the stats from 2024, and the guy is not hitting as many approach shots this week, or at least as well. I think we're going to fade Fishburne. And this is more of like a field play here. Like the stats may say that Hodges at 50 might be a better fade. I'm going to say Fishburne though, because Hodges is a very accurate driver. He's been accurate this week. Fishburne can get a little bit more sideways off the tee. And the reason why I want to fade him is he's a little closer to the lead. He might get a little bit tighter as he's teeing off on that front 9 today. And that front 9 is going to be absolutely devilish. If he's tight at all, if he has any sort of nerves, that could be a real issue for Patrick Fishburne. So how about we do that? We could go Eric Cole. The other prop that I'm still considering taking would be this JJ Spawn prop. I think on Prize Picks, we're going to take this one, though. We're going to go with the Eric Cole. Let me just check on JJ Spawn. Spawn has a line here on Underdog, right? Yeah, and he's also at 69 strokes. So the reason why I wanted to double check that is maybe we'll just play Spawn over here on Underdog here in a second, and we'll take this over here on the Prize Picks side. So in fact, yeah, this is going to be the slip that I take on Prize Picks for today. It's going to be an under on pars or better for Fishburne. That's a minus 140 value. And then over here with the Eric Cole prop, he is minus 170 for his over and 3.5 birdies. Unfortunately, we're taking him at 4, right? So we have the push equity up there at that number. But if he happens to have a really good day like he has for rounds 1 through 3, he's going to go over that sort of line. And just to show you, I believe he's either tied or pushed this in all 4 days. Sorry, pushed this or gone over this in all 4 days. So yesterday he would have pushed it. Round 2, way over. And then round 1, way over out there with this line. So yeah, I like what we're doing here. And I know Fishburne's only gone under this in 1 of 3 rounds, but this is a field play. If he has any sort of nerves out there, last time he was in contention, by the way, Fishburne fell apart the last time he was in this situation. You could easily see it happen again. Let me actually, do I have my laptop? I don't have my laptop next to me. I was going to enter this on my other account, but we'll do it after the live stream. Let's go over here to Underdog next and find you a few props over here. So on the Underdog side, I already know I like this JJ Spawn under. Shots gained metrics just look fantastic. If we're going to match them up with anyone, though, I kind of want to find a fade that would make some sense. So what would it look like if we did that? Only like a 2.5x payout. So probably not what we want. Let's go back to the shots gained metrics. So if we're going to find a fade candidate towards the top end of the board here, like a Steven Yeager, right? He's been very inaccurate off the tee. That's kind of sketchy. A Harry Hall could be a potential fade candidate. Or we could go with Lee Hodges. Let's see where they have Lee Hodges out there with his line. So Lee Hodges is at 69 strokes. Yeah, probably not my favorite for a fade just because I think that's going to be the field average. If this was 68.5, I'd probably go out there and fade him at that sort of number. 69 and even 4 birdies is just a little bit sketchier in my opinion. So let's see if we can find somebody at 68.5. In fact, let's just type in strokes so we can just bring up those lines and isolate them. And let's see if there's anyone at 68.5 that's not playing good golf. So Yeager is at that number, which by the way, just to go back to these odds over here, what is Steven Yeager? Yeah, he's minus 145 for his over at that number. Let's go through a few others. So Fishburne is minus 155 over, and that's at 68.5. Who was that? Was that Brian Harmon's minus 130 over? Nick Taylor, if they posted his line, like he could be a fade that we get to. Let's see. Do they have anything for Nick Taylor posted? Probably not because he's a scrub, but you never know, I guess. They do, but he's at 69 strokes instead of 68.5. So if they have any of these guys 0.5 lower, I would be thrilled to go out there and fade them. Tom Hoge, he's not my favorite guy to go out there and fade. I guess if we did this because of the anti-correlation, it'd be pretty damn close to a 3x payout you guys can see over there. So maybe it's not the worst slip to go out there and take. But what I'll say about Yeager is that his irons have been really good this week. Like, I'm not so sure that Yeager's going to have a bad day because of that 5 shots gained approach. So I want to find someone a little bit better than him to fade. Like maybe a Ben Griffin could be a play. Ooh, and Adam Hadwin could be it. All right, we've got some 68.5s here that can actually make quite a bit of sense. Harry Hall's not hitting the ball that well on approach. Actually, I'm liking what I'm seeing here now that we're going a little bit further down the board. Rico Hoey's had a decent approach week. Thomas Dietrich, maybe he's a fade candidate. Let's see. We'll see what the odds are on some of these players. Echeverria, and then what's Paul Peterson there? 69.5 strokes. Let's see if we have a line for comparison on any of these guys down towards the bottom. So I want to look at the shots gained metrics for Hadwin, Dietrich, and Harry Hall. So first off with Harry Hall, the reason why I said he was a decent fade candidate is that he's doing it all with the short game. He's gained like 8 strokes between his around the green and the putting. That feels a little bit unsustainable. Now let's look at Hadwin. That's one of the other players we wanted to look at. He has gained on approach but lost off the tee. So that's not a terrible stat profile. So for the sake of this, I'm actually going to go ahead and take Adam Hadwin out. And then let's look at Thomas Dietrich, who I know Dietrich's been struggling a little bit more than some of these other players, but let's see how he's been struggling. So he's gained off the tee, gained on approach. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the best fade out of all of these is probably Harry Hall, just because of how his ball striking hasn't been there this week. Like, he's actually into the negative out there on approach, and he's also dealing with the pressure of being closer to the lead. Now, I don't know if we have a line for comparison. Let's see. So yeah, he's at 68.5 and he's close to even money. Let me see what he is over here in Fanduel. I'm assuming probably the same. Yeah, so in fact, if anything, he's even slightly juiced towards the under. I don't know if I agree with that, though. I might still take this because, I mean, they have guys like Jaeger at minus 145 over. Like, I don't necessarily get that. Let's see where they have guys like Hadwin. Do they even have him posted on here? I don't think. Wait, where is he? It claims that there's one on my screen, but I don't see Adam Hadwin anywhere. Oh, it's up at the top. Let's see if you have him over here on DraftKings. Probably not if he's not on FanDuel. So yeah, no odds posted for Adam Hadwin. Hadwin's a lower tier player than somebody like a Harry Hall. I mean, you could say the same thing about a few of the other guys that we're looking at there at 68.5 strokes. Dietrich, even a lower tier player than what you have with some of those higher tier guys. Let's see, does Dietrich have anything for comparison? Probably not. Yeah, so nothing over there. Let's see on FanDuel. Yeah, nothing to compare to over here in FanDuel. It's a tough choice. Let's look at round 3. You know, when all things are equal, why don't we look at round 3 and compare them that way? So let's just star Dietrich there so he stays on here for us. And then let's star Adam Hadwin as well. And then we'll sort it by the guys that we starred. So, okay. At the top, we got how they played yesterday. You can see Hadwin's ball striking was horrendous. And then Thomas Dietrich was a little bit into the negative on approach, but better with his off the tee play. Let's look at the bogeys for each of them. So yesterday, Dietrich had 3 bogeys, and Adam Hadwin had how many? He had 2 bogeys on the day. Let's go to round 2 for each player, 2. Round 2, he had 2. So he had 2 the last 2 days. And then Dietrich also only made 2 that day. And let's go to round 1. Round 1, he had 1 bogey, and then Dietrich only had 2. Wow, so these guys have gone under on every single round, which is very surprising given that both is only -4, -5 to this point. And if we go over here to some of the averages, and again, the reason why we're doing this, we're trying to see like how many bogeys that they can make, is to go over this sort of line. I mean, they're probably going to make 4 birdies. Making 3 bogeys is a really good way to ensure that. Plus, we could circle back over here to pars or better. I think I guess they didn't have either of those 2 up. They do have Harry Hall posted at 15.5 bogeys or worse, which, by the way, to circle back to the prize pick side, Harry Hall makes a decent amount of bogeys. He's number 73 on the PGA Tour when it comes to that category. He could also be another guy to look over there on that site. Let's see, Hadwin or Dietrich, which one are we fading? Let's look at round 2. This is tough. They're not the worst plays on paper. Like, going through them, they're not playing as terribly as you would think with the -4, -5. So maybe not. We might be forcing things in a little bit by trying to find a fade. Like, I know we're trying to force feed it to give ourselves a slightly better payout, but it kind of feels like we're forcing it a little bit, and I don't like that. Let's see. Do we have any Keith Mitchell lines to look at? He's also another one of these guys we have at 68.5. So yeah, it doesn't look like they have any Killa Keith lines posted. So yeah, nothing for Killa Keith. Damn. It would be so much easier, right, if we just had a 68.5 that was like -140 towards the over. No lines to compare to. So these could easily still be values out there towards the over. It's just hard to say with certainty, right, without having those actual sportsbook lines to compare to. If I had to take a guess between these two, though, actually, I'm not even going to take a guess. Let me just look at my projections out here for round number 4, and we're going to take the lower projecting player in terms of raw score. So in Adam Hadwin, let's see where I have him with projection. I've got him at 35.3 points. And then let's do our comparison with Dietrich. Dietrich, I've got at 39 points. So yeah, if we're going off my projections for fantasy, then we're probably going to want to fade an Adam Hadwin. So this is going to be the slip that we go with. We're going to fade Adam Hadwin for his over on strokes. We're going to take the under out there on JJ Spawn. Some tough pin locations. I think the scoring average is going to be close to a 69. So it's essentially just asking Adam Hadwin to have an average or worse day. So I feel pretty solid about this sort of spot. The one with JJ Spawn, we have the push equity out there at -1. And the opposite of somebody like an Adam Hadwin would be a JJ Spawn. You can see there, right? Hadwin's up there at the top. We'll actually take Dietrich out of there so we could just compare them apples to apples. If we look at the whole event, it's a massive difference off the tee. It's a 6-shot difference out there on approach. They're a little bit better out there, but the putter even out there with the JJ Spawn. That's why we're taking that sort of prop. So we're enter that one over there on the underdog side, and those will be the 2 free slips that we give here on the stream. Of course, guys, for all the different slips that I'm taking out there for round number 4, make sure to check out my Patreon page for all of that. On there is where I'm posting every single slip that I'm entering for every round, including all the data out there for research every day. I'll be posting all the averages like you see throughout my content. I've also got the weather forecast posted over there for my Patreon members, as well as all the reasoning for all the prop slips that I'm getting to. It'll give you a little peek behind the projection process for what I do for any given slate, and is hopefully going to make you guys a better of golf. Not just give you guys the exposure to go out there and tail, but to literally make you better at finding value for yourself. So that someday you don't need to have somebody telling you what to bet. You can go out there and find some of these bets for yourself. So it's meant to be, teaching you the process rather than making you reliant on somebody for your plays. My idea in an ideal scenario is that you can join my Patreon for 3 to 6 months, whatever the case may be, to go out there and learn the process, and then go out there and do it all for yourself, right? Start picking your own plays. So that's the idea with it. We'll go over any 3 balls and that to end out this live stream, but that is going to be it over there on the prop side. My throat is killing me, by the way. If you guys can't tell. Let's get the hat back on. Hoffman over 3.5 birdies. Not my favorite play. So I know that if you take a look at the averages from last year, he looks like a really good player. However, and this is a huge however when it comes to Charlie Hoffman, you have to keep in mind the kind of fields that he was playing in. So the reason why I've seen a few people talk up Charlie Hoffman this week is if you take a look at his stats, he was number 28 on the PGA Tour in birdie or better percentage. Unfortunately, he played in all the weak field events last year. Right? He wasn't playing in all the majors. He wasn't even playing in the signature event sort of fields. So when you're looking at where that birdie or better percentage comes from, it's not as impressive as, let's say, a Scotty Scheffler, who's still number 1 on tour and had to play all the majors, all the super hard courses like API, Players Championship, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's an okay lean. I mean, the average was 3.75 per round, but just keep that in mind when you're looking at that stat with Charlie Hoffman and really with any of the stats. Like I know Fishburne was the number 3 bogey avoider last year, but he also only played in the super easy events. So it's reasonable to think that if you're only playing at resort style easy golf courses, that you're not going to make all that many bogeys. So yeah, I think it's an okay lean, but be a little careful. When you're saying he's a good round 4 scorer and he's gone over every round, those are 2 good data points for it. So, hey, I don't want to talk you completely off of it, but I at least do want to mention the fact that in terms of like actual birdie talent, I'd have to look at birdie or better gained. That is something that I track in a lot of my stats. Off the top of my head, I think he's like middle of the pack in birdies or better gained. Like he's closer to like number 80 on the PGA Tour when it comes to birdies or better gained. So he's not a terrible play at 3.75. Hoey fade at 68.5 strokes. Let's look at the shots gained metrics for that sort of play. Let me get, so let's see. There's Hoey. He gained off the tee. He's gained on approach this week. Round number 3, I'm not so sure about that. I don't think that he's a prime fade candidate or something like that. I think if you wanted to take an over, I guess you could, just because I think the scoring average is going to be close to 69 strokes. But with the shots gained metrics and whatnot, I just don't think it's like asking for it or anything like that. Let's go through a few 3 balls and whatnot. So yesterday we almost swept all of our 3 balls. The only one that didn't end up winning, I believe, was the Sepp Straka 3 ball out of the 3 that we took. But because we had a plus 200 in there, also another plus 125, it was a massively profitable day. On top of our prop exposure yesterday, where we cashed out on one of our 2 slips fully. So it was a really good day yesterday. Hopefully we can repeat that over here for round 4. And what we did yesterday is going to be the exact same process over here for round number 4. We're going to try and find some guys that really hit the ball well the first few days that can hopefully keep it going over here for Sunday. And for the sake of this, I'm going to avoid the groups towards the top. I more so want to go to some of the groups that are starting a little bit further back. So let's find somebody on here whose shots gained metrics are really, really looking good. And especially yesterday. So Nick Taylor had a pretty good shots gained metrics yesterday. A Russell Henley at -10. He kind of stands out there. Then also you got Lucas Glover down here at T11. By the way, he putted the ball really well yesterday, which I think was the biggest sign of things to come. Let's look at group Henley's in real quick. So let's find the Henley group. I also want to look at the Glover group if we can. So Henley is going against Woodland and Gerard. Unfortunately, is about even money at that sort of number. I don't like that, but maybe we can parlay it with something else. Let's look at Lucas Glover's group. So these two are hitting the ball beautifully this week, and he's plus 190. Okay, I take it back. The Henley at even money, we're probably not going to bet. It's just terrible odds. But Lucas Glover at plus 190, like Lee Hodges, you guys already know that I think he's due for a shitty round, mostly because of the fact that he's losing on approach and he's gained 6 strokes putting. Like that just screams unsustainable. And then Mav McNeely, I know he's had a pretty good week. He's one of the guys that we just pointed out that had some good shots gained metrics. But should he be that big of a favorite over Lucas Glover, who's also been playing really well? I would say not. Right? I think it should be closer to like maybe plus 135, plus 140 for Mav McNeely, and closer to maybe plus 160, plus 155 over there for Lucas Glover. So yeah, we're going to bet that. So let me see what I can get on Hard Rock Bet. I can't bet on Fanduel myself, or else I absolutely would. I'm down here in Florida, so my options are a bit limited compared to some of you guys out there. And just to, I guess, compare the odds, make sure we're getting the best available. Let me see what they have over here. So let's find our guy Glover. He's plus 180, and then over here on Caesars, just for the sake of completion, we'll make sure we're getting something comparable. Let's find good old Lucas Gloves. Is there at plus 180 as well. So yeah, plus 190 looks to be the best number out of the major books. Hard Rock Bet, please give me the plus 190. Let's not fuck around with some plus 180 BS. Let's give some comparable odds. That'd be great. And there's no search feature still over here on Hard Rock Bet. So I know I bitched about it yesterday, but still no change. Lucas Glover, by the way. Guys, if you have Hard Rock Bet, you've got to enter this. Lucas Glover is plus 220 on Hard Rock Bet. So kind of like the JJ Spawn prop yesterday where I said I'm going to go 2 units because I really like the odds that we have available in the line. I'm going a 2-unit bet on Lucas Glover to win his matchup. So at plus 220, that is going to win me a pretty decent amount of change if he can go out there and get the job done. So yeah, dude, the plus 220 compared to this plus 190 is just ridiculous. I've honestly never seen that. Their rolls are the same, by the way, when it comes to some of their dead heats. So that's not the reason for the higher payout. And I think that one's an absolute smash bet. So yeah, let's do that. Maybe that'll be our JJ Spawn from yesterday. And let's see if we can find one more. So we're going to go a little bit further down the board. So Mac Meissner, he looked really good yesterday. What group is Meissner in? Let's see who he's playing over there for Sunday. So he's going against Shank and Suber, but he's plus 120. Yeah, that's going to be a no-go for me. We could look at Nick Dunlop. Dunlop, by the way, he did gain a bunch of strokes putting, though, which but he did really good on approach. That's why I wanted to look at him. Also could have done better off the tee. So it feels like he had some room for improvement. But who else could we go with here? Maybe it is just Glover. I kind of want to look at Adam Svensson. I don't think he's going to have a line, though. But let's see if they have anything up for Svenny. So they do. They do have an Adam Svensson group up. He's going against Taylor Pendrith and Lashley. So just to take a look at that group, Lashley had a decent week. He gained on approach out there in round 3, but he's about a neutral in the 4 stat categories. Pendrith, though, I already know how he played round 3. Round 3 was a really tough one for Pendrith. Did not have his best stuff. So if we're going to target a matchup at like plus 180, sometimes it's not a bad idea to go against a golfer who kind of looked broken the day before, like a Taylor Pendrith, who's still the favorite in this 3-ball matchup. If he goes out there and he plays the same kind of way, it could be a head-to-head between Svensson and Nate Lashley. And Svensson's clearly the better player between those two. So let me see what kind of odds we can get over here in DraftKings. So Svensson is plus 170. Yeah, he's probably going to be plus 170 over here on Caesars as well. Let's get to the right Svensson. So plus 175 actually over there on the Caesars side. I'm going to go with the half unit bet over there on this. Sorry, a 1 unit bet over here in Adam Svensson, because I still think it's a decent play. It's not as good a number and as good a play as what I got over there on that Lucas Glover spot. So we're going to go with just the normal 1 unit play over here on Adam, which I'm assuming has a line. Yeah, he does. And yeah, he's only plus 175 on Hard Rock Bet right now. So yeah, the half unit bet is going to be what we do on Svenny. I still want to bet him because I like how he's playing heading into Sunday, which, by the way, if you didn't see it earlier, Adam Svensson, from the shots gained perspective, just to show you this here, gained a bunch on approach out there yesterday and then just lost with the putter. He also lost off the tee. He's normally a lot better off the tee. He's normally a positive into the putter as well. So if he gets any sort of positive regression, I think he could be in for a really good day. Can Cole close it out? I think he's got a shot too. He's playing well. So if you take a look at how he's played to this point in the week, Eric Cole's got one of the better shots gained records. So over the first 3 days, he's gained 6 strokes ball striking. I hope he closes it out. He's from down here in South Florida, from the same area as me, so I'd love to see it, but who knows, right? Golf's a crazy sport, that's for sure. Alrighty, guys, I think that's all we're going to do for the live stream. I've got some NFL stuff I need to post out there before the 1 o'clock game. So best of luck out there with all of your exposure here for today. Best of luck whether it's on the DFS side or over there with your props. Just as a reminder, I do have my showdown projections posted over here for the Sony Open. So I'll scroll to the bottom, show you guys what that looks like. I know I've been doing a lot of the showdown streams over there on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel, but I still am posting all of these for my Patreon members, of course. So for all the projections, for all the ownership out there on Sunday, I know it's a little bit late at this point to be plugging that. Make sure to join the Patreon page for that and all the different prop slips that I'm entering for round 4. I guess I'll show you some of my diamonds in the rough down here. I'm playing Luke List, just hoping that he somehow figures it out on Sunday. He's a differentiation play. Taylor Montgomery, the same exact thing. Worth noting that both of these guys have hit the ball decently this week, just cannot buy a putt. And I'm only going to say decently with how they hit the ball, but because there's a reason why they're only -3. And then same thing with Cristobal de Solar. If you guys know anything about Cristobal de Solar, you'll know that he's an extremely aggressive player and somebody that really goes after it off the tee. So might want to take a look at some of those players out there in your exposure out there for Sunday. Alrighty, guys, that's all I've got out there for the round 4 stream. Best of luck with all of your exposure out there tomorrow, and let's get it out here for the rest of the year.